The year was 630 CE. Arabia had entered a new chapter of its history. Only months earlier, the idols that had stood for generations inside the Kaaba were removed. Soon after, the tribes that had resisted were defeated at Hunain, and in the mountains, the long confrontation of the siege of Ta'if had come to an end. Across Arabia, tribes were beginning to recognize the authority of the growing Muslim community centered in Medina. But beyond the deserts, another power was watching. To the north stood the vast and ancient Byzantine Empire. For centuries, Roman armies had dominated the lands surrounding Arabia. Now rumors spread through caravans and travelers. Roman forces were gathering near the frontier. If the new state were to survive, it could no longer remain isolated. In earlier campaigns, military plans were often kept secret, but this expedition would be different. The destination was announced openly. The army would march north toward a remote desert frontier known as Tabuk. The journey would be nearly 700 kilometers across the harshest terrain on Earth. It was not simply a military expedition. It was a test of faith, endurance, and unity. And the one who called for this march was Prophet Muhammad. The timing could hardly have been more difficult. The call to march came during the peak of summer. In Medina, the orchards were filled with ripe dates. Shade was precious. Water was limited. For many, leaving their homes now meant abandoning comfort at the most difficult moment of the year. Yet the call was clear. 30,000 men would prepare to march north. This army would become known as Jaysh al-Usra, the Army of Hardship. Preparing such a large force required immense resources. Food, animals, weapons, armor. The treasury of the young community was small. But the response was legendary. Umar ibn al-Khattab brought half of everything he owned, hoping that on this day he might surpass his close friend. Soon after came Abu Bakr. When asked what he had left for his family, he replied calmly, "I have left for them Allah and His Messenger." But the greatest financial support came from Uthman ibn Affan. He provided hundreds of camels fully equipped for travel. He supplied horses. And he placed 1,000 gold dinars before the Prophet. The Prophet remarked with admiration that nothing Uthman would do afterward could harm him. Even the poorest came forward. Some wept because they had nothing to offer and no animal to ride. Their sincerity would later be remembered in Revelation. But not everyone welcomed the call. Among the population were individuals known as the munafiqun, the hypocrites. They spread doubt quietly. They told people, "Do not march in this heat." They warned of Roman armies and the dangers of the journey. Many excuses were made. Yet among those who stayed behind were three sincere believers: Ka'b ibn Malik, Murara ibn al-Rabi, and Hilal ibn Umayyah. They did not reject the expedition, but they delayed. At last, the army began its journey. 30,000 men, the largest force ever assembled in Arabia at that time. The suffering began immediately. Many soldiers shared a single camel. One man would ride for a short distance, then step down so another could take his place. Water was scarce. Food was limited. At times, the army was forced to slaughter camels simply to drink. Yet the march continued, day after day, across burning sand and endless horizons. During the march, the army passed through Al-Hijr. These ruins were associated with the ancient people of Thamud. The Prophet instructed the army not to drink from the wells there. It was a place remembered for divine punishment. Even during war, the companions were reminded of lessons from history. Water supplies were nearly exhausted. As the journey continued, the army began to suffer extreme thirst. At that moment, the Prophet prayed for relief. Authentic narrations describe that clouds soon gathered. Rain fell until every container was filled. The army was refreshed. Yet beyond the boundaries of the camp, the surrounding land remained dry, a moment they would never forget. After weeks of exhausting travel, the army finally reached the frontier region of Tabuk. They prepared for battle. Weapons were sharpened. Scouts scanned the horizon. But something unexpected happened. No Roman army appeared. The forces of the Byzantine Empire had withdrawn. The determination of the army had already achieved its objective. The Prophet remained in Tabuk for nearly 20 days. Leaders from nearby regions approached seeking peaceful agreements. Treaties were signed with the rulers of Ayla, Jarba, and Adru. The northern frontier of Arabia was now under the influence of Medina. The expedition had ended without a battle, but its impact was profound. The army began its long journey back to Medina. The Muslim state had demonstrated its ability to challenge even the greatest empires. But for some, the trial was just beginning. For the 3 companions who had stayed behind, the return marked the beginning of a trial. The community was instructed to avoid them. For 50 days they lived in isolation. Finally, revelation came announcing that their repentance had been accepted. The city of Medina rejoiced. Their story became a lasting lesson about honesty and repentance. The Expedition of Tabuk was the final military expedition personally led by the Prophet. It proved that the community could endure hardship together. Strength is measured in perseverance. Within a year, tribes from every corner of Arabia would travel to Medina to accept Islam peacefully. Historians would remember this as the year of delegations. The Army of Hardship had opened the final chapter, and ahead, another historic moment was approaching, the farewell pilgrimage. Join us as the journey comes to its conclusion.